Hey there, welcome back to the Essential Coaching Skills Podcast. I'm Doug O'Brien, your host. Today I have a very special guest. I mean, all my guests are very special, but I'm really excited about having this guy here today. Brad Waldron, I've known for a long time, and yet I haven't spoken to him in years. I mean, literally many years. It's kind of amazing to have him on the show. A friend of a friend, they were having coffee together. Said, "You know Doug O'Brien?" Yeah, no. So it came to pass. So it's really just a gas to have him here. But you're gonna love him too because he's great. He's great. He's a great storyteller. He's a great seminar leader. He's an athlete. He's a champion athlete. He's just this really, really interesting, funny guy. Great to talk to. He's a keynote speaker at places. He's won awards for that. He's just an all-around guy. Brad Waldron, look him up. But for right now, let's just get him on the air. So I'll just stop all this gabbing and we'll just run through the credits and see you here in just a minute. You are listening to the Essential Coaching Skills Podcast, a show devoted to uncovering the systems and the secrets that set the best apart, where you learn how to take your coaching clients to the next level, while you grow the coaching practice of your dreams. So sit back and relax, or sit up and get excited. Either way, you might want to pay attention. This could be important. There he is.
Hey,
Brad. How are you?
Man, all the better to see you.
Oh, shucks. You're just such a sweet talker. Where the heck are you, Brad? You live in England or something, right?
Yeah, I live in England now. It's I'm down on the south coast in a remarkable place called Angmering. It's an ancient old village of England. I live in a house that was built in 1760, and I, as an Australian, man, that's older than when Australia was colonized, right? So
Wow.
that fries my brain. But I'm on the water. And I'm only a good 90 minutes out of London town. Yeah.
Wow. So you have like running water and central heating and everything?
Well, not yet. Not yet. But I see the council have put it in their projections for 2027.
That's nice. At least you have electricity and Wi-Fi, so we got that going for you.
Yeah, well, I got a couple of young kids out there on push bikes generating electricity as we speak.
That's why That's because you're such a motivational speaker. You can keep them going. Keep going, kids.
Go on, guys. You those thighs. Don't worry about the burn. The lactic acid, that leaves you.
Good for you.
But here's the thing, interestingly, Doug, in this beautiful old house that I'm in, there's a tunnel in my place that goes to two areas in the village. I'll give you a slice of pizza if you can guess one of the two areas it goes to.
The pub.
There's one slice of pizza coming your way. Pepperoni, or we doing just cheese? The other place it goes, interestingly, is to church.
I was going to say that the parish.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, why your house? I mean, I understand those; they should be connected, but why your house is in the middle?
Well, mine is the old schoolhouse of the village.
Oh, okay.
And so what would happen is back in the days of piracy, when folks were sort of like, tea was a big commodity to steal and all those type of things, they would divvy out the loot in the pub because it's an old pub. And if the duty men, which were the forerunner to the police, turned up, they would get down into the pub, down into the tunnel, and they would scoot along and they'd come out in my house, which is the old schoolhouse, or they'd go across to the church.
Nobody ever think of looking there at the schoolhouse.
Yeah, right. And there's a beautiful Roman well out there that have blocked up, and there's a cottage that I've got as well. Extended the cottage a couple of seasons ago, and in digging up the foundations, we found bodies, right? Bodies, yeah. And they weren't bodies like from 1985, a mass murder type thing. It was a Saxon burial ground.
Wow.
Yeah.
So did you have to stop digging? Did you have to?
No. A university came down and excavated, and they took them away. And well, look, I kept one. Don't find bones.
Secrets safe with me. I want to.
Yeah, just between us.
You got it. Oh, look what I just did. We got small suddenly. So, Brad, I met you. God, was it 30s? Tony Robbins days back, a long
Yeah, listen, it was just
time ago.
before. It was. I tell you when I can name the date, and this is
No way. Seriously?
Brad. Yeah, Rain Man's memory here. It was the 3rd of December, 1988. No, 89. 89 is what it was, and it was at a Dan Millman seminar on 57th Street in New York City on a Saturday morning. And then on the Sunday, we did a in-body workshop where Dan taught us to juggle with pairs of socks.
I remember that very well. I brought Dan to New York.
Yeah, you did.
Wow.
And you advertised it in the Village Voice, wasn't it? One of the pages there. And I went, good heavens, this is the Dan Millman, the author of The Way of Peaceful Warrior. I was just a 20-year-old fella right then, 20 years old. And I just moved to New York, and I went, I get to meet the guy that wrote the book. And I was infatuated with that book when I was maybe 15, 16.
Yeah, I wasn't much older than I think I was 30 at the time. But yeah, it was a pretty amazing time. It was amazing for me to bring him to New York because I discovered he did that sort of thing, and then I was running Tony Robbins seminars.
Yes.
And, started my own thing called Doug O'Brien Associates or something like that at the time. It was something like that. Anyway, but I brought him to New York. I figured I'm going to bring people to New York. I want to do seminars for them so that I can make money while I'm attending the seminars that I want to take. So didn't quite work out that way.
Then there was the Tony Robbins. It's called the Mind Revolution at the time.
It was Mind Revolution, yes.
Yeah, and we did that, and then you brought out, and I attended that, and I went, well, this is kind of really cool. And you had John Robbins from Baskin Robbins, for New American, and that's
New America, yeah.
And you were just really starting to become incredible at the sleight of mouth material that you pioneered just at that point. You remember.
What a memory you have, Brad. So all that rugby playing has not really damaged the old brain.
My body's held together by titanium. No word of a lie. If I won't do this, but if I go da-da and do the Hulk thing, you'll just see where the titanium lies.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I didn't get the head injuries, fortunately.
Thank God. You did break your neck, you said at one point, though, right?
Yes, I did. I broke my neck I broke C6 and C3 in a pretty, I can only describe as a kamikaze attack where it happened. And it was a very significant day for me. I learned that I was mortal. For a testosterone male, and I say that with jest, but
so that must have happened quite young. You probably would have been in your 24 when that happened.
43. I should not have been playing rugby at 43.
I was just going to say, took you a little while there, didn't it, Brad, to learn that?
Yeah, I figured I was having a good run. I started playing rugby when I was 6 years old, and I played all the way through to 43. A little bit of a break when I was living in the States, but I just enjoy it. And do you know what? It took me years to work this out. It wasn't this, like, I love the sport of rugby. I just love that combat element, but it wasn't the rugby that kept me there. It was the kinship you develop whilst you play rugby. You do things for each other that you just don't do in other walks of life.
Right. Right. Yeah. So you have somehow taken all of this madness that is Brad Waldron and created quite a career out of it. You are a sought after public speaker. You just came back from the Grand Ole Opry where you're working with folks over there. So tell us about that. What is this career you've forged?
It was something that I think the best to describe is I detected. It was something that I was always drawn to, and something that, I just, no matter how many times I tried to step away from it, it just dragged me back into the ring. And it's something that I passionately believe in and I enjoy. It's vocational and it's a part of my path and my journey. And I get the good fortune of traveling the world, delivering, I'm going to call them experiences. So it might be a keynote to a couple of thousand people at a conference in, I don't know, Miami. Or it might be working with a board of directors at a well-known movie studio that produces Harry Potter films. Or it could be just working with one person who's a salesperson who's really struggling to find their way, or struggling with being able to agree or negotiate commercial terms with an organization. And that seems to be my sweet spot, just doing those type of things. There's no one thing I do particularly better than the other, but I do get the opportunity to really help people live a better life. And when I say better life, I mean they're happier. When I say they're better, they're more engaged with life. And when I say better, I think they're actually more fruitful and productive in their own careers.
Okay, so fascinating. And how do you do that? I mean, for instance, as an example, did you go to college for that? What was your major? Did you take a major in traveling the world, and every time you want to get out of it, somebody drags you back because they want to hear your nice stories about how
I don't know. I left school, right? I'm going to defy all logic here. I left school at 15. And I went and I played sport. Sport was my passion, and education. I was fine. I was, a good B grade student in most things. I averaged out in B's, couple of A's, one C. But the thing is,
I don't care, Brad.
Yeah, no, I'm just thinking, why am I judging myself at the age of 58? I'm going into a deep-seated trauma. But no, what I had was I came from a family that was really quite interesting in so much that my mum had a stroke when, I was 6, which left her paralyzed and unable to speak. And my father had split probably a year before that. So I grew up in what we would term these days as dysfunctional family, but to me it was a normal family. And my dad was also a pretty significant business guy. And I ended up working for him at 15 for 3 or 4 years. And I affectionately call that the unlimited slavery apprenticeship. And so I learned the ways of the world through him, but the moment I could escape, I did. But I escaped with a good pedigree in me, the pedigree of hard work, the pedigree of falling over 8 times, getting up 9 times, but with my sporting stuff as well, where I had the good fortune of playing rugby at a really significant level, winning a couple of Australian titles, and then my martial arts stuff, which was a dual thing for me. I competed for Australia when I was, 18 or 19 in the precursors to the UFC, I think we can call that. It was some really good martial art, kung fu stuff.
Wow.
And then I ended up in New York, right? And then I met you, and you sort of were almost like a channel for me. And this is like a gift you gave me into my future that you never saw. And this is one of the blessings I think we get as coaches, is we help people discover gifts that we never see in the future. And that became the journey, because I think I then just immersed myself in the world of Tony Robbins. And I think he was calling it neuro-associative conditioning systems at that time.
Yeah, it's a funny thing. He went through a series where he started off as an NLP trainer. So I learned NLP. I got certified in NLP from Tony. Second year is also NLP, but then that's around when Bandler started having those legal troubles. So Tony didn't want to be associated with NLP that much. Plus, they didn't want to be associated with him. They thought he was not doing it right or whatever. He says, fine, I won't do it your way. I'll call it neuro code systems for the first year, and NCS. I don't remember that. Those might have been before your time. But for a solid year, it was neuro code systems. So he used the analogy of like the scanner codes that you go over. So everybody has a code, blah, blah, blah. But anyway, the next year he changed it to neuro-associative conditioning, which I believe it still is. So I am one of the few people certified in NLP, neurocode systems, and NAC. I'm certified.
And I got to say, as an NAC, you were one of Tony's first master trainers, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, that's
really, it's good. Yeah, put that on my resume. So what's the gift that you discovered that you that I didn't see? What were you referring to?
Just it began the journey. And then when I moved to the UK, I got heavily involved in NLP. And for a number of years, and got certified as a trainer through some guys that laddered up, I guess, into Richard. But one of the guys there, a guy called Dr. Willie Montero, was and is Svengali at creating personal change for people. And Willie had a really interesting background, that as a surgeon, as a general practitioner, doctor, but as a homeopath and a hypnotist, which when you put all those together and shake it as a cocktail, you come out with this thing called a Willie Montero. And I just saw Willie do magic, and he was so instrumental in my life in teaching me how to, because NLP is basically, we talk about three things. It's an attitude, and it's a methodology of modeling that leaves a trail of techniques. And so I became not obsessed, but really focused on how do we model high performance in people rather than the therapeutic route. And that became part of my journey. And I became my own patient. So I when I say patient, my own experiment. So I would take up a new sport, a new martial art. So I come from a internal Chinese martial art background, and then I take up Kendo, and I go, well, let's model Kendo and what it takes to become a great Kendo practitioner. And I earned what they call what's a black belt in Japanese? Not a knee dan, that's second dan, san dan, third dan. I can't remember what the first dan is. Shodan. And I got my black belt inside, like 14 months or something crazy. And then I won a couple of really big, significant tournaments against guys I should never have won against, I'll be honest. But I was using NLP as the method to help me accelerate performance. And around in the mid-90s or something like that, I met, the NLP stuff I was getting disillusioned with, because everyone became obsessed with the techniques and not the attitude. Everyone got obsessed with fast fixing, but without having a methodology that sits behind them. And at the same time, I met Dr. Stephen Covey, the author of 7 Habits, and a mate, a guy called Peter Foggin. We set up the Covey Leadership Center in Europe. And I got involved in that. We started to roll out 7 Habits workshops throughout Europe, but all organizationally based, for the people at Nike or IBM. And then when I could combine, the NLP stuff with Covey 7 Habits, I started to find a bit of Brad flavor in there.
Cool.
And that became the beginning of the journey of growing a few businesses in the world of training and development, I think.
Nice. Beautiful. Yeah, Mexico, very good sense. Yeah, I met Covey at a Tony Robbins seminar. Tony had him in there. Were you there for that certification in Hawaii?
In Hawaii, Peter was. Peter was standing in a urinal next to him. They were both doing a wee at the same time. And Peter went, "Oh my gosh, you're Stephen Covey." And
hope he didn't turn too. Oh my God. This should have been embarrassing.
Yeah, and that part, I think that was the beginning of it all, was the urinal moment.
Wow.
Yeah. But Stephen was a magnificent man. He has a purity in him that I've not seen in many people.
Yeah, and I've been greatly influenced by Stephen Covey in his work, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, and Do the First Things First book is great. I'm always showing people those videos of putting the big rocks. In fact, I've got a Post-it on my wall right there to remind me to put the big rocks in first. So a little hand-drawn Post-it. Yeah. Great stuff. So that's awesome. So tell us, this is called the Essential Coaching Skills Podcast.
Sure.
So we could just gab and it's fine. You could tell us some good stories. I'm sure that you've got a million of them. I'm actually sure you have a million of them. I know you. So I know for a fact you have a million of them. And we could just let you tell stories. And maybe we will. But I want to know if someone out there were interested in being the next Brad Waldron, how would they go about modeling that? How could they create a career such as yours? I mean, it's really pretty cool what you've done.
Yeah, it's that's a great question, because part of me just went, "Oh, perish the thought of finding 2 of us." That would just. But I think
very honest.
Yeah. I go back to Dan's book. Do you remember the 4 purposes of life?
Sure. Yeah.
And one of his purposes is find your calling, right? And I think that's one of the hardest things that we've got to struggle with. I've got a 22-year-old kid right now, and Adam I love with all my heart. And he's trying to find his calling. He's this professional rugby player in a world that doesn't recognize that as a profession. People might say, "Oh, come on, Adam, what are you going to do once you fit? Rugby's not the thing." But if that's what makes him joyful, why would you stop anyone from doing this? You're a long time dead. You're a very long time dead. So spend time finding things that give you joy. And then I think that old catchphrase is, if you find joy in what you do, you'll never work a day in your life.
Right.
And in my space, I think there are a couple of things that are really important, and that is find things that make you happy. Not only make you happy, find out things that when you do it, time slows down because it's really great. But that doesn't mean to say it's easy. That means to say, are you willing to put in the hard yards? And that was one, that unlimited slavery apprenticeship thing that I said about my dad that I joked earlier on. That was so fortuitous because some of the hard things that I've had to go through, had I not had those reference points or those paths that I've navigated earlier on in life, when I came up against challenges that I have in later life, my 20s, 30s, 40s, or whatever, I perhaps would not have pushed through those psychic limits that folks would say, no, I'm checking out. Yeah. Does that sort of make sense, or does that resonate?
Oh, yeah, it makes sense. So follow the bliss, as Joseph Campbell would put it. Follow your bliss. But don't expect it to be easy.
No, exactly. I think if you look at the top of tops, every one of them has a story of adversity somewhere, and it's not so much the pebble in your shoe; it's a dragon that you've got to slay. And most dragons are inside you, not outside. Like, oh, I need to raise $3 million for a fundraise to be able to expand the business. Yeah, good for you. And that's a strategy that you need to really work out how to do. But the big dragons are often inside us. Yeah. And surrounding yourself with people that can accelerate you is a huge one as well. That's really huge.
So question for you. You know that NLP, as you described before, is an attitude plus a methodology that left behind a trail of techniques. When you go off and you do like a corporate training, like you did recently at the Grand Ole Opry, who is that for?
It was for the Grand Ole Opry.
It was for them specifically.
It was the people that actually worked there, and it was their marketing folks who are beautiful.
So would you say that you are what some people say Tony Robbins is, which is a motivational speaker? Are you telling stories and making them feel good? Or are you actually doing that and giving them techniques and methodologies that are...
That's a great call. I most definitely do. I think if I'm doing let's say I'm doing a big conference and there's a couple thousand people or something in the room, well, that's more yeehaw, right? But when you're working with smaller groups, and the folks down in Tennessee that I was working with, so that is a smaller group with the folks down in Tennessee. So there is a bit of yeehaw there, but there's got to be a lot of aha, and that's a really important piece for me. So what I was able to do with them was to get them excited about what better could look like for them in the space, without giving the subject matter away, because I like to ring fence a bit of boundaries around what I do with my clients. I'll generally talk about something rather than talk about the specifics of what I did with a client, just because I think I'm respecting their confidentiality. But then once they get excited, I've got to build skill as well, skill and capability. And so if I take an audience outside of the Grand Ole Opry, let's talk about someone else, client X, I might be helping them with their leadership capability, or how to have tough conversations, or how to navigate a strategy that will help them go from X to Y by when. And that's got to be skill set, so that when they go away, they're not left hungry saying, oh, I need to go and see Brad again because I need to get fired up to do something. No. Okay. I want you to have this capability and the skills to self-learn, to self-orientate, to self-manage. Because that's the whole thing. Like if you go back into Covey's methodologies of the 7 habits, I think two of the most significant things that people don't talk about in the 7 habits is, number one, is the power of paradigm shifting, because nothing will change unless that changes in how I see the world. Because doing something different doesn't need to say that the world will change for you. You need to see different to be different. And the second thing is the power of the maturity continuum, that we go through stages in life where we start dependent, then we go into independence, and then interdependence. And there's 3 habits to go from dependent to independent. And there's 3 more that get me to interdependent. And I think our job as enablers of people, as coaches, is to remove people out of dependence. where they have the personal, private victory. And if I go Covey language, how to be proactive, how to begin with the end in mind, and how to put first things first. And if I want to grow a teenager out of a dependent child, they've got to learn how to own their emotions, how to make great choices, how to evaluate decisions, and how to choose to be appropriate for whatever situation they're in. And if they could choose, well, choose. What's your end in mind? What's your end in mind with your schooling? What's your end in mind with this relationship that you're in with your father? What's your end in mind around what do you want for dinner? Right? And I say metaphorically, what the first 3 habits do is help me go, hey, listen, you're a chef in this restaurant, and this restaurant's called your life. And if you're the chef, you could get to choose the menu. And you go, really? You go, yeah, choose the menu. All right, Brad, I've got this menu. Great. I'm going to put you in the kitchen. It's time to cook it. It's time to make the food. And that's called the discipline of execution. Put the big rocks in first. And so if I'm working with an organization, I want to give them the skills and tools to be able to do that. That makes them better than what they were.
Cool. That's great. That's really great, because it's really, really very impressive. And, a lot of times people come to coaching because they don't want to do the 9-to-5 grind. And that's fine. I didn't want to do the 9-to-5 grind. That's why I'm not doing that. I have done that, but it's not fun. And I really take my hats off to people that can handle that. But, I work a lot. I mean, I don't do a 9-to-5, but I'm working 7 days a week most of the time. It's rare that I take just vacation. I might be traveling, but I'm working.
What would cause you to take a vacation then?
Well, let's not talk about that, Brad. Come on, get your coaching hat off.
Sorry, wait. Hang on. Just put it on the side here. There we go.
I have taken vacations. It's just that I don't very often. I just wanted to say that because people have this impression that this is just easy. But it just isn't. I mean, it's not, I don't know, it's got its benefits for sure, but there's a lot of work involved. And then it's also true what you said before, that, hard things in life. Everyone who's a big achiever has had obstacles, has had big, hard things happen that they have overcome, and that's shaped them. And most of them will tell you, thank God for this obstacle. Thank God for this hardship. If it wasn't for that, I wouldn't be who I am today. I mean, Dan Millman had that motorcycle accident, right? And he shattered his leg. He couldn't walk again. And then he met Socrates and all that sort of story. But, it really did shape his life. He became who he is because of that bad thing that happened. Very, very, very bad thing that happened that he almost killed him.
Yeah, true. There's a wonderful NLP trainer out of Australia. He's Hawaiian, actually. His name's Marvin Orca. And Marvin was, oh man, he was a world sleight of hand champion. He's a brilliant fella. And he said to me once, he said, I was moaning about something when I was younger, something about not working, or blah, 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 blah. I was having Tourette's to myself. And he said, Brad, do you think in 6 years' time you might look back at this and it might turn out that this was the best problem you've ever had? And I said, yeah, it could do. And he said, why wait? And it was a beautiful reframe, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Beautiful reframe.
Nice borrowing from Richard Bandler's stuff, but that's the beautiful thing. We can borrow from other people and sound brilliant when we do.
Was that a Richard thing? Was it?
Yeah.
Don't tell me that, because I've had 30 years of that being Marvin.
Well, maybe he said it first. Maybe Richard stole it from him. It's certainly possible.
It's possible. Yeah, no, it is. I think one of the things I saw, to loop back to what you were saying, I read not recently, a couple of years back, that there's a high percentage of chief executives in our world who all come from single parent families. It's an interesting dynamic, huh?
Yeah. I don't know if it's as rare today as it used to be.
No, it's probably not. But at the time when it came out, I just thought that was interesting. And I was in a room of chief execs when this industrial psychologist shared the statistics with us. And he said, well, let's do a quick check. And, the average age was my age, and I was probably middle 40s, late 40s at that time. And he said, so how many chief execs in this room come from a single parent family or something similar? And I was a little shy to begin with. I thought, I don't know if I want people to know this, but I did one of those. And then as I saw other hands do little sort of Tyrannosaurus Rex arms do that well, I started to get more confident to go, yeah, I'm one of those. And I looked around the room, and and we all looked at each other, a percentage, which probably would have been maybe a third of the room. I just went, wow, what's the chance of that? Fascinating. Yeah. So adversity is a gift, but it doesn't feel like it at the time.
No, for sure. Yeah. One of the hardest years of my life was spending a year in London when I was 21. Right after my dad had died, I became a student at the Guildhall School of Music, and it was horrible. It was the hardest year of my life. It was just hard. Everything about it was hard, but it was great. And I wouldn't want to do it again. Trust me, I would not want to do that again, but it was great. I learned so much about living.
You were at the Guildhall, which is institutionally one of the, if you're going to learn music, the Guildhall is where you would learn. How did that, did you get the value out of the Guildhall, or was it just a big, gestalt at this point?
Oh, what do you mean? I certainly got a lot of value out of the Guildhall. My piano teacher was brilliant. I learned, I studied composition and conducting there at the Guildhall. I learned the Alexander technique for the first time at the Guildhall. It was part of the course curriculum to learn the Alexander technique. So that was,
amazing.
Yeah. But it was London in 1980. It was 1977. I mean, there was no mass communications. Phones barely worked.
Barely worked in London. That was 1977. That's when Grease, the film, was released. That's when Star Wars was released in 77. Yeah. And back there in London, the pubs didn't open on Sundays, and if they did open somewhere, it was for 2 hours.
And the subway ended at 10:30, and I didn't live anywhere near town. I lived like way the heck out. So it's like, it was hard. It was tough. It was a very tough time. But anyway, the only reason I'm saying that is because it was great. It was great. It was a hardship. It was really hard. It was like, oh my God, I'm so alone. I'm so sad. And miles away between me and the next person. It just was hard, but it was fantastic. And I don't think I'd be the person I am today if I hadn't had that hardship. And it was of my own choosing. I decided to go there and do that. I didn't know how hard it would be, but I'm glad that I did it and glad I stayed. But there's a lot of things like that in life. Breakups we have, divorces that we have, things that take place, losing a job, losing a career. It's like, oh my God, I thought I'd be here forever. This is the perfect career. And then suddenly it's like, you can't do this anymore. Find something else. Like, I don't know. But then you find something else and it's like, wow.
I was talking to someone today, running a little coaching session with them, and they were struggling with a colleague who had been made redundant, had been retrenched. And this colleague had been working for this organization for 27 years. And then all of a sudden, this organization said, Doug, yes, but no, we don't need you anymore. And it was done. And the organization had just been bought by a larger parent group, and they're based in Denmark. And this organization that I'm working with is based in Wales. And this person I was coaching is just going, Brad, I'm really struggling. This person's just being a real shit. They're just doing this and that and the other. And I've gone, oh, geez, that sounds terrible. How's that? And then we're talking about how it's impacting her and her composure. And I said, I'm just wondering, if you were able to be the best version of you right now, what would the best version of you see in this other person that you currently don't see? And she just stopped for a moment and she went internal. And then all of a sudden it was like she saw a ghost. She went, oh. And I said, what was that big shudder? And she said, oh, this individual, let's call her Joe, who's been made redundant. She goes, she's just been made an orphan. And I said, how do you work that out? And she said, well, she's had a family for 27 years in this organization in mid Wales, which pick the deep south where there's no running electricity in the US. That's almost what it's like. It's very beautiful though. And And she goes, all of a sudden, she's been told she's not wanted. And I went, wait, what does that mean? Oh, no wonder she's, and then she described the behaviors that she was going through.
Mm.
So what has that done for you right now? She goes, oh, I've just had a paradigm shift, I think. And I'm seeing her through a different set of eyes right now. And I go, well, what does she need? And she goes, and she told me what she thought she needed. And I go, well, who do you need to become to help that? So that you can create a boundary for yourself as well. So you're not affected by their anger or their passive aggressive behaviors or whatever that was being displayed. And she goes, well, it means I've got to rise above, and we had a really fruitful conversation.
Nice.
But,
That's a great question. So that's a beautiful question. Who do you need to become to rise above that? Is that a kind of typical coaching question you ask?
It would be one that I pull out of my socks, where if I try to think about a question, it doesn't come. So I just try to, what am I feeling right now? And I just express the feeling, and it somehow resonates. And I like helping people go meta, because when you're in the problem, it's very hard to see outside it.
Mm-hmm.
So you can't see the trees because you're in the woods. So I try to get people to get above the trees in their little drone, their emotional drone. But I don't use that language. But I just try to ask questions that are more thoughtful. And if it requires someone, just look, the power of questions, I think, is the gift of all great leadership, all great coaches, all great mums, all great dads. And we get taught to ask good open questions, good closed questions, leading questions, pivot questions. But I just love simple, thoughtful questions where I put an active verb in the question. So instead of how, I say describe. Instead of what, I say map out for me. And so these thoughtful questions with an active verb, describe, explain, tell me, illustrate, that gets people, they can't answer it instantly. And they've either got to think it a deeper thought. They'll say to you, Doug, that's a great question. And you think it's a stall. It's not a stall. It's their kinesthetics trying to wrestle with what that question really is unlocking.
Nice. That's really valuable. And I appreciate you saying that, because again, people here who are listening are one of two people. Well, I guess there's more than that, but basic crowd is people who are coaches already and want to become better at coaching, and people who are thinking about becoming coaches and would like to do more of that. Perhaps, shift out of doing whatever it is that they're doing and, quit their 9-to-5 job and, become a coach or something like that. So knowing how to coach and be as really good, great as you are, to find that sort of power of questions, and not just any questions, but, questions that allow them to go meta, and then ask questions that are more activating, not just how or why, but like explain more about that, expound on that. That's really valuable insight for listeners, I think.
Thank you for noticing that. If there was a coin, and the two sides of the coin, one is the power of really lovely, thoughtful questions. The other side of the coin that I've spent a lot of time on in the last few years is that just the power of confirming what someone says or confirming what I see. And I know, have you come across Chris Voss?
Oh gosh, yeah, I think I have. I mean, the name rings a bell very loudly.
Difference. He's an ex-FBI hostage negotiator. He's a good guy.
Yeah.
And he does some really good stuff. But even before, and Chris has really not pioneered this, but he's pushed it out into mainstream, I think. But even before Chris, I was taught this skill, and it's sort of like an extension of Covey's Habit 5, seek first to understand, then to be understood, by giving people psychological air or psychological oxygen, so that the more they breathe, the more they can work with what you're working with. And that confirmed skill, when, I could see you and I could see that you're looking whatever, pick an emotion. And I might go, Doug looks whatever. And I could go, hey, Doug, are you okay? And 99 times out of 100, Doug's going to go, yeah, I'm fine. But, I can see that you look frustrated, confused, angry. But if I label what I see, it's like a drawbridge in a castle. And if I label it correctly, the drawbridge starts to go down. And I might see my son Adam, and he'll be looking pensive. And I can remember one moment we were having dinner down in London. and he just gone a shade of white, and he was on his mobile device. He was a middle teenager then. And I said, Adam, you all right? And he's gone, yeah, fine. Why? And I went, oh, damn. I goosed that one up, didn't I? So I gave it a second or two, and then I just went, Adam, you're looking a little pensive. He went, no, pensive. No. I go, okay, so you're looking a little bit distracted. He goes, oh, I just got some stuff going on. And I go to him, stuff going on? And he goes, oh, yeah, I'm just texting a guy right now. And he did that look away from me, you know, the way a dog does when you catch a dog with its when it shouldn't be doing what it's doing, like stealing sweets or treats. And I go, yeah, but it's enough to make you feel a little anxious right now. And he goes, oh, Dad, yeah, listen, if I tell you, you won't get cross with me or anything, will you? And I go, man, I can't promise that. But I go to him, Adam, no, mate, it sounds as though this is sensitive to you, and I just want to hear, because it sounds important. And then he was being bullied by this guy who was a few years older than him, and this guy was saying what he's going to do to him next time he sees him. And he told me, and I'm not going to repeat it here because it involves words that typically in the USA they don't get spoken about. And I just immediately I went into Hulk mode. I went, give me that phone. Right. We track this guy. Where is this guy? I fire. And he's gone, Dad, that's the reason why. And I went, you're absolutely right. Now it's out of my system. You can have your phone back, Ad. And then we went through a thing, and I said, what do you think we should do? And we had a magical 40 minutes de-escalating this thing. But anyway, it's not about the story. It's just about that coin I mentioned. One side of the coin is really great, thoughtful questions. The other side of the coin is not being autobiographical in a question and simply confirming what you hear, paraphrasing what they say, or labeling the emotion you think you're seeing in front of you. And that gives the psychological drawbridge opportunity to come down. And then they invite you into their castle. And that's a very sacred place.
That's a really nice metaphor for that. And I think that one of the things you're alluding to is very consistent with what I've taught over the years and do with my coaching clients, which is to say, not to paraphrase as much as to repeat precisely what they've said. Like if they said, yeah, I just having this thing happen with this guy. Oh, so you're having this thing happen with this guy? Just to ask it as a question, but use their words, because if you paraphrase it, so, oh, you're having some troubles. They might not be having troubles. We might not think of it that way. So you don't want to put that on them.
No.
I also like the idea of labeling the emotion and saying, well, you look like you might be a little pensive. Just asking it as a question rather than saying you look pensive or you look tired or but
yeah. Well, do you know, when you say that, when that happens, a few things happen. One is establishing a little bit of trust between you and me, because I'm not feeling judgment. I'm feeling curiosity. What also happens is if you get it wrong, I'll correct you, but it won't be with malice. It will be with better insight. What we want anyway. And the third thing, which I think is really the gift, you springboard off it and tell me things I would never have asked about. And I just go, well, where did that come from? I wouldn't have even asked about that. Can I tell you something happened the other day with that exact skill? I was running a workshop. It was a leadership workshop, a 6-month program that happens, oh my gosh, once a month. 30 people in a workshop. And it was for a company that does livestock auctioneering, right? And that's not an industry for me, but the whole thing around running high performance one-to-ones, coaching skill, that's the content for these 30 leaders of this business. And the chief exec says to me, Brad, just want to let you know that the retiring chairman's coming in today. And I went, why? He said, I don't know, but he's retiring. How old is he? And he's gone, he's 85.
Wow.
And I went, why is he coming? And I'm feeling a little bit of imposter syndrome. And this guy was the founder, and he's an old farmer by trade. And I went, that's got to be him. And this old fella appears at the door, and he's in what I call farming number ones. And that's a clothing where they have a certain tweed coat. They have a check shirt. They have these trousers they wear, and he had a pocket watch. And I went, oh, and he had face like leather saddlebags, right? He made the cast of Yellowstone look like chumps. And I walked over and I said, hey, I'm Brad. I'm so pleased to meet you. And as an 85-year-old, he shook my hand and he had an iron grip, and it was awesome. And I said, I'm so thrilled that you're here today. And he said to me this, he went, it's important that I'm here today. Now, what was interesting about that was I just thought the conscious self of Brad went, yes, it is. Look at these 30 people. They're your leaders of tomorrow. But the resonance of his voice when he said, it's important that I'm here today, I just went, no, there's something deeper here. And I just went, so it's important, huh? And he went, more than you'll ever know. And I didn't know if that was a boundary he put up, but I took it as a boundary. And I said, well, there might come a time when knowing it is important, but I want to welcome you. Can I get you a cup of tea? And let me show you where I'd love you to sit. I'd love you to be up front with me. Is that too much to ask? He said, no, I'd like to be up. And so we had this little sort of pitter-patter conversation. I walked him up to one of the front seats. Anyhow, I do my stuff. I'm doing a bit of jazz hands, and we do some skill work and all that type of great stuff. And then at 11 o'clock, we have a break, and he comes over to me and says, today, my work is done. It's time for me to leave. And it was like a command, right? And I just went, and I've got the chief exec now standing beside me, and I've got this old fella here. And I said, and I go, no, I'm gonna lean in on this. I'm gonna knock on the do not disturb sign, but I'm gonna use those skills that you mentioned. And I said, so your work today is done. And he went, absolutely. And I said, that sounds final. And he looked at me and he held the look just for that little bit longer of a pause. And he said, it is final. And I said, well, I'm so pleased you've spent that finals piece with us. I'm gonna lean in, but tell me if I'm wrong. But when you say your work is done, can you tell me more about that? And he said, today is the 14th anniversary of my son's death. And had he been alive, he'd be running this business today. And on this day, every day for the last 14 years, I do the day's work he would have done. And I went, that is the most precious thing I can remember ever hearing. He said, my son was precious. And I said, I know that your work is done and we're having a coffee. Would it be too much to ask if we could have a coffee? I'd like to know more about your son. He started to cry. No word of a lie. The chief exec that was beside me, he was looking like a goldfish because his mouth was going, and he didn't know what to say. I had the most beautiful 15 minutes just learning about this guy's son. He left. And then the chief exec turned to me and he said, Brad, I've worked here for 6 years as the chief exec. I had no idea about any of that.
Wow.
Isn't that just remarkable? Right?
It is.
That's the gift. That's the gift of great coaching conversations where we just give people space and they fill it with the things that they want to or the things that they need, you know?
Yeah, beautiful. So that is a gift, and it's a gift obviously you've got in spades. If there were to be one thing that we could learn from that, those of us who are not naturally gifted with that skill that you just demonstrated, how would you summarize it? Just be open to your heart, to listen with your heart. How would you say that? Because it seems like that's what you're doing, is listening with your heart. But there's also, obviously, there's a mental thing that's going on as well. You're listening for certain things.
Yeah, I think with people like you, or maybe lucky enough to be me, or what I've been lucky, it's turn off your own agenda. I think that's the big thing. Turn off that autobiography that's trying to shape, trying to help, because that actually gets in the way, I think, more often than not. And then the other part of it is, what are the skills that give people the space to fill for themselves? But, you know, and it's very kind that you would say that's a gift, but Doug, I've worked really hard at that.
No, I appreciate that. I know that. I know that phenomenon, the things that seem like, you're so talented. It's like, yeah, I've worked forever to develop that skill. But
Yeah.
but it is a talent that you have, and you've been able to develop it as well.
Right.
Um,
But it's the martial arts stuff. It's, I got my Brazilian jiu-jitsu guy is a guy called Dustin Dennis out of Florida.
uh-huh.
And you go and people come to training courses or training sessions, or I'll teach them BJJ, and I'll teach you something and it'll, whatever the technique is on how to escape a choke or something. And I'll go, okay, come on, let's drill that. And someone will drill it 4 or 5 times and they'll go, okay, Brad, what's next? And I go, what's next is 4 or 5 more times of that. But we're going to do it 104 times. We're going to do it 400 times.
Mm-hmm.
And so, Dustin says to me, Brad, listen, I'm boring, but I'm bloody good. And I'm good because we rep it out. And so these skills, you're a phenomenal concert pianist, right? And that doesn't come because you tinker and you play chopsticks and maybe you'll do a bit of Dire Straits on the piano. No, it's because you've sat there and you've worked your fingers, you've worked your notes, and then you feel it. You go from playing consciously into being the music, right? Benjamin Zander, the conductor at the Boston Philharmonic, he says, who am I to be if my player's eyes are not shining? So he looks for shining eyes with these classical players. And I look for shining eyes when I work with people. And how do I bring that out? And that's a philosophy for me. That's an attitude, right? To go back into our NLP language.
Nice. Anyway. You also have a beautiful gift for being able to speak well. You're really good at, speaking from the heart and inspiring people with your words and your tonality. It's really engaging, beautiful tonality. The thing, what's that quote about Bruce Lee? He said, I'm not worried about a guy who's practiced 1,000 moves once. I'm worried about the guy that's practiced one move 1,000 times, or something like that.
That's exactly right. And that, that book, The Tao of Jeet Kune Do, that's missing on every martial arts practitioner's bookshelf, I think, because Bruce had those concepts. He was way ahead of his time, you could say, or you could say he's an ancient mystic. It's a bit like Dan. I think Dan's one of those guys who just has that gift of seeing the essence of what's in front of you. And Bruce was magnificent.
What's the name of that book?
The Tao, Tao of Jeet Kune Do, and Jeet, Jeet, Kund, Kune, and Do, Do. And that was Bruce's martial arts system. So he came out of Wing Chun and started to put some boxing in and some Western fencing, and he created his martial art. And it's there's a lot of handwritten notes. I love handwritten notes in books because it shows me the toil that you go through as you create your mastery, and that's the difference between for me, when people say, Brad, what's the difference between being a white belt in BJJ and a black belt in BJJ? And I go, not much apart from the color of the belt, but there is one philosophy that I work with. When you're learning, going through the colors of the belts, you're learning the skill. That's but when you get the black belt, you're now learning the art. And that's what I think coaches should be working towards. Learn the skill of coaching so that you can now start to practice the art.
That's beautiful. And your book is called Present Naked.
Yeah, come on.
So that's not an actual recommendation, is it, Brad?
Well, the whole nudity stuff, dun, dun, dun. Let's get cracking.
You said you weren't going to do that.
Too many scars under this shirt. No, it was something that when I coach people in presentation skills, whether it be talking to a board or to their team or getting on stage on the Grand Ole Opry, people are so inside their head, they lose who they are. And I look for people to find the grace in nudity, and I call it emotional nudity, so that I can stand up there and not have to be Tony Robbins. How many times have you seen someone on stage who tries to channel Tony Robbins? And I think, what a shame, because who you are is better than who you think you are when you're Tony. And that's the naked reference. And I go, there's three gifts that you come with. Be you, be confident, and be present. Because when you're presenting, I would doubt very much anyone sitting in the audience going, hey, Doug O'Brien's on stage. I hope he sucks. The audience don't think like that. They want you to do good. And being you is all you'll ever need to be. And that's the thing about being naked, what I talk about in that book.
Nice. Yeah.
You know, it's a simple book. It's a simple book that gives people pragmatic skills to be able to apply instantly. But not only that, there's things in the book that I do that I just don't see people teach when it comes to presenting, and it just demystifies it pretty simply.
Nice. And people can get Present Naked at Amazon or other things, but can they also buy it at your website, which is, I think, bradwaldron.com?
Yeah, I changed my website to this-is-brad.com because I've got about 4 or 5 different websites depending on what I'm working on, but I'm not, whether you go there or not, I'm not fussed. But no, I think
what's the website? This is Brad?
Yeah, it's called thisisbrad.com, but I've had to put a hyphen between this-brad is-brad.com.
Oh.
Yeah, so because I do a bit of wildlife photography. I've got my sales training stuff. I've got my naked presenting workshop. I've got my intelligent inspiration stuff. So sales training things. And rather than have it all under one website, I've just put a holding page together and say, where do you want to go today? Oh, you want to look at some breaching whales I photographed in Alaska? Go here. Or you want some stuff on sales training? Go here. Cool. But Amazon, you can't get better than Amazon, can you? In our Western world?
No, you can't. It is the best. That's why they call it Amazon, obviously.
Yeah, come on.
Okay, so this is brad.com, or I was at bradwaldron.com. That seemed to have quite a bit of stuff. Also with a hyphen.
Yeah.
Brad-waldron.com.
Yeah, someone stole my website. That's the reason why. The other reason I had to do it. Some rat bag stole is it the DNS or something of bradwaldron.com. And I just thought, you rat bag, how have you been allowed to get away with that?
Yeah. And now they're trying to sell it back to you for how much?
It was a lot of money. And I just said, forgive me, Doug, but I said, off you fuck.
I'm shocked. So we will not mention bradwaldron.com. Forget that. Don't forget that this is Brad. This is Brad. We'll make sure it's down in the cliff notes and stuff. Yeah, man.
So it's all fun and games.
Fun. It's all fun and games till somebody gets their eye poked out.
Yeah, it's very true. Yeah, but the thing about the naked presenting, it's always funny because that name and a training program also creates instant leverage.
Right.
People go, oh, I've got to go to a workshop this next week. Yeah, what are you going to? It's called Naked Present, and I'm really worried. And the emails I get, hello, I'm looking forward to meeting you next week. I just need to know. And the second issue I get is, I've just had notification from my IT police at my organization that I've been trying to look at porn online because I looked at your naked presenting website or present naked website. And nothing like creating a little bit of drama that doesn't exist, right?
Well, Brad, sure is good to see you again.
Man, it's a pleasure.
Next time you're in New York or next time I'm in London, let's get together.
I would love that more than you'll know. I dearly love that. I felt guilty when I was having a beautiful coffee with that mutual friend.
Well, we've said his name now several times. You can say it out loud.
Oh yeah, well, I was having a coffee with Dan Millman out in Brooklyn, and Dan took me for a lovely walk around Victoria Park. What a park!
Prospect Park.
Prospect Park. Sorry, yeah. And we were looking, and he was through the new skyline at Brooklyn, where he talks about Mordor Towers with this one iconic building that's sitting there. And then he goes, hey, have you heard from Doug? And I went, oh, Doug, there's a guy, right? And then he sent a message to you immediately. And it was, I felt terrible. Not terrible, but I just felt, oh, wouldn't it be great if Doug was here? Because you had no idea how back in 1990, you started a path for me that is where I am right now. And you were the centerpiece to that path. It was a Dan Millman workshop or a Tony Robbins workshop, but it was Doug O'Brien that started it all.
That's so cool.
Thank you.
Well, you made my day. Thank you. I'm glad you turned out right. That's one thing I did right. Got one thing going for me.
Yeah, man, you created something. But thank you, my friend.
Great to see you. Thanks for being here. Thanks for taking the time. Really do appreciate it.
Oh, my pleasure.
Okay. See you soon.
Take good care.
This has been the Essential Coaching Skills Podcast. Thank you for being here. It's a pleasure seeing you again. Hope to see you again real soon. Come back next week when we have another gripping and exciting episode of the Essential Coaching Skills Podcast. And if you want to, you can find out more about us, each and every one of us, at essentialcoachingskills.com. Thanks.